Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our Criminal Record Season 1, Episode 3 reaction and review. We now have more questions, and I know this is the sort of show where you like entering Episode 3. Okay, are you going to start to pay off a couple of things? Are you going to start to get us closer to some things? Like, where's the Hayes Lane collar, everybody? But no, instead, we come out of this being like, what's Daniel doing? Wait, what did Daniel do with Patrick? What's his motive for all of this?
Like, what is Daniel's motive at all? Coming out of episode 1 and 2, I was starting to feel like Daniel had some sort of part in this, but maybe his hands weren't completely dirty, but mostly dirty. And he was helping his friends, other cops. And he was just kind of like this, like, I know you guys have something and I'm believing what you're telling me and I'm helping you, but he doesn't know everything and he's turning a blind eye. After watching this episode, and watching him almost let June die,
Yeah.
now I'm just like, he's got to be fully dirty. No, like you're going to let somebody die over whatever it is you're trying to keep secret?
He's a bad dude. Like let's throw that out there. Daniel Haggerty is a bad dude. Now, what are the reasons behind him being a bad dude? I think this show is going to try to make things complicated, and this is my only hope for Criminal Record. I know you guys are just making this show in real time, so you can obviously listen to the advice that I'm about to give you. Don't go the super predictable route with all of this. Like, give us a big surprise as to why Daniel is doing some of the things that he's doing, because I think as us as viewers, we want to really be taken on a ride, and it's not as much fun as we're able to sort of predict where things are kind of going with all of this, because it seems like there's just some elaborate cover up that's happening, and it might be due to just cops doing bad things or breaking rules or whatever way back when. I want to see it get a little bit trickier. We'll get so much more into Criminal Record Season 1, Episode 3 here, but be sure to hit that subscribe button. We have so much more coverage coming. That's the best way to support us. And also, this past weekend, just in case cops with questionable ethics are 100% your bag, we also are covering True Detective over on HBO.
Okay, let's just get into the Daniel of it all because, yeah, he was doing a lot of really questionable things in this. I mean, we saw him at the end of the episode walking with Patrick and helping him get out of that situation we saw him in when he was like a younger boy, which was like, why is he doing this? Like, I don't understand. And the same with June, where it was like, if that other officer hadn't come in and he saw the reflection of him standing behind him in that van, he never would have called that in. He would have let June die. Over what? What are you hiding, Daniel?
It's it's a really bizarre, interesting scenario that's going on here with him, because there's a lot of emotions obviously mixed up in this guy. I mean, my tinfoil hat thing when it comes to Patrick in particular is there's at the very least a part of him that feels guilty over the idea that Errol Mathis is sitting behind bars for some extended period of time. And I don't know if this is some sort of arrangement that was made way back when all of this happened, where Daniel was basically like, okay, we're gonna let this guy go down for this, but if we do this, we're gonna look after his family, we're gonna make sure that they're okay, so that at the end of this we can't feel that bad about this. Errol Mathis had, a quote unquote history before. We saw some of that explained with Sony. It's not really the same thing here, Daniel. You can't, compare any of this to what he's in prison with now. But I think he must feel like at least a certain element of guilt here, to the extent that he's willing to go out of his way to help Patrick, who he doesn't have any sort of direct reason to help unless he does feel a certain way towards him.
I was thinking guilt as well, that it's like, his mom was murdered, his father's in jail. So it's kind of like, okay, then what happens to Patrick, right? So maybe Daniel feels some sort of guilt over it, knowing that he had a hand in putting away Errol, who didn't actually commit this crime.
Okay, let's get to the other thing you brought up, though, which is the idea that Daniel was willing to let June die. I have a couple of questions here, as I think most of us should when there is a person who was willing to allow someone else to die here. Okay, number one, was this a long-term thought or a spur of the moment thought for Daniel? Was this a, oh, I see this situation happening now, I'm just gonna let this play out this way, and then, oh, there was just something that happened here temporarily. There was a glitch. I didn't see human error. Like, these sort of things can happen. Is this that, or is this something where he's just been like actively sitting around all day being like, I wonder how I can let this cop die who is kind of sniffing around into some stuff that I do not want her sniffing around into.
Yeah, I think it was a spur of the moment that he was like, I'll just let this situation play out the way that it's going to play out. This is a terrible comparison, but it's kind of like over on The Bear, for those of you who
Mhm.
watch The Bear, where we've had Carmi a couple of times be like, sometimes the kitchen just goes up in flames. And for a minute there, I just sit there and be like, what if I don't put this out? What's going to happen? My
Yeah.
restaurant's just going to burn to the ground and I won't have any more problems anymore. And here it sort of feels like it's that same situation where it's like, you know, what if I just let this happen to June? Then she's not going to be sniffing around anymore. All of my problems just go away. I can blame it on this other guy who already had some technical difficulties with this, which he did anyways at the end, where he was like, hey, I'll give you a pass. This was your fault in the first place, but if I don't write you up, maybe you don't talk about what you saw, kind of thing, without saying that, but kind of saying that. You know what I mean? I think he just saw an opportunity and was like, if June goes, that kind of just takes away my problems, which is just shows us what his value for human life is. Like, what is it that you're covering that is worth somebody's life?
I had this other crazy thought when all of this was going down, but let's make this clear. This is not any less dark than what we're already talking about here. That was just sort of like, what if Daniel arranged for there to be technical difficulties at this particular time, so he had some sort of out for why he didn't act sooner, but at the end of the day, he could still be like the dude, I saved your life, and in doing that, you try to buy a little bit of good, because this is the real thing with Daniel. He thinks when it comes to intelligence, he is up here. Every other person alive is like right here. He thinks that he is smarter than everybody, that he is like 5 steps ahead. And he thinks that, okay, if I can do this for somebody, if I can make June feel either threatened or indebted to me at
Mhm.
different points, then she is just gonna, wash her hands of all of this, play along, go along with the rest of her career. And it's just like, dude, shouldn't you know at this point that that's not exactly how this is not how she gets down here? Like, she's going to continue to dig on this.
Yeah, she is going to continue to dig on this. And throughout this episode, he kept coming up against that same roadblock over and over again where, his old buddies are like, hey, by the way, you said this was taken care of. It's not taken care of. She's still looking into this caller. She's still trying to find this woman. Like, she's still digging into this. She's told you she's not, but she's lied to you. And she's continuing in on this. So what are you going to do about it? And I think that is obviously why he decided at that time that he was like, hey, if I can get away with just letting her die, I'll do that, and no one's going to be the wiser. But now that he doesn't have that opportunity, how is he going to stop June from digging into it?
What I'm really curious about at this point is that it's clear that he and all his old buddies, they're old buddies here for a reason. They have a very, very long history, but it's just like, at one point, especially if it is your old buddies who have done a lot of malfeasance here, at what point are you willing to just sort of push them in front of the bus and then like start running the other way? Because clearly he's not above it. Like, he is somebody who is very much out to preserve his legacy.
Yeah, but the thing is, if Daniel is this dirty, I mean, you're in the company of the same type of people. Like, it seems like these other cops have done something really bad. He's friends with them. He seemingly is covering something up. Whether or not he participated in whatever it is that they
Hmm.
participated in, he's participated in it. You know what I mean? Like, covering it up, he might as well have participated in it.
That's 100% the thing, and that's why, as smart as you feel like you are, Daniel, you frustrate me to no end, and maybe that's the point. I mean, Peter Capaldi is great at this role, but it's sort of like I sit back here and I'm just like, Daniel, do you really think you're better than any of these other people? Because it's like there's Sure, there's a part of me that wants to think that Daniel may not be as complicit as some of these other people are, but yeah, if you're just taking part in the cover up and you're allowing a guy to basically sit behind bars for as long as this guy has at this point, to the point where he's just either willing to give up or he's going through like different stages of grief every single day, you're just as bad as them.
Oh man, seeing Errol and that conversation, like it really hurt my heart. Like he is really going through it. And, everything that Sonia was saying after, where it's like, oh, what was he like today? Because he is, like you said, going through these different stages of grief just over and over and over and over again.
I think he's clearly a guy at this point, from what we have seen, that he doesn't want to be in this situation. Like, that's clear. But he also doesn't know how to get out of this situation because his memory all around Adelaide's death is sort of just so hazy for a number of different reasons. There is, the desperation that he felt, the way in which he and Patrick ended up leaving that scene. Like, it's explained in this episode that, oh yeah, it looks like, he was heading to his mom. So clearly he was looking for comfort as opposed to just like trying to flee the scene of a crime that he
Mhm.
committed or anything else. But he's got this desperation. It seems like his brain was very, very hazy. He talks in here about being medicated at the time in which he gave this confession. So
Mhm.
it's just like, if you don't really know the answers yourself, like how willing are you to be able to stand up and be like, this happened, then this happened, then this happened? Like, he is in an impossible situation.
Yeah, when you have trauma like that where you've come in, your woman is dead, your son is, also, really freaked out. You're trying to like get him out of there, get him to safety. You get into a car crash, you're on medication. Now the cops are on you asking questions. It's just trauma on top of trauma all the way down the line that by the time they get this confession out of him, I just don't think he knows what he's saying anymore. He's just this car crash, obviously hit him in the head, hit him everywhere on top of the trauma, on top of the medication. I think they were just able to lead him into a confession where later on he's just like, I just don't know what is happening.
Yeah, and all of this goes back to the very fundamental question at the heart of this show. And I don't think we're any closer to an answer at the end of episode 3. Maybe I'm a little bit frustrated by that. It's just, why were there people willing to work so hard to incriminate him? Were they either protecting somebody else who was the actual killer? Was this just pure like laziness on their part where they were just like, okay, this guy looks like he's going to be guilty. Let's just save ourselves the time or the trouble. Or is there
Mhm.
something else going on here that's neither of these things?
It might have just been the easiest route because, as we've seen on lots of crime shows, it's always the wife, it's always the husband, it's always the boyfriend, it's always the girlfriend. It's the easiest route for people to take that they were like, we'll just wrap this up. I think, and I
Mhm.
said this earlier on in our last review, Tinfoil Hat,
Yeah.
these other cops were involved in that murder. And maybe not Daniel, but his friends were involved in that murder. And they were like, okay, we'll just pin it on this guy. They brought the information to Daniel because we've seen Daniel go and talk to them and be like, is there anything else you need to tell me that I don't know about this? Because, this girl is sniffing around and I don't want to be caught with my pants down. So, like, is there anything that you didn't tell me about this I need to know? No, no, Daniel, you're fine. So that's sort of what it feels like, that they were involved in her death. They brought Daniel as much information as he needed to know. They were able to pin it on Errol. He was there at the time. He ran out with Patrick, all of that, that they were like able to convince Daniel that this is what it is. And Daniel just had some blinders on to be like, hey, this all seems right. Why wouldn't I trust my friends?
I think all of this then goes into where we are in the present, where one of the big questions I have is, okay, does Daniel want to be a good person or does Daniel want to be a quote unquote good cop? And it seems it's clear to me that it's the latter, to the extent that he's willing to just sort of pay people to get him answers on various cases, even stuff that's going on now. Like we get a little bit of an update on his car service job in this episode, and it's like, why does he need that money? I think he needs that money at this point because he's willing to cut whatever corner he can in order to preserve this like quote unquote legacy of, I am Daniel Hegarty, super cop. Like, this is what I care about. I want a metaphorical statue when I retire. I want people singing my praises. It's like, okay, great. You have an illusion. Everyone can celebrate your illusion, but nobody thinks you're a good person. Nobody thinks you're doing good things. It doesn't feel to me like, yeah, he's got his old buddies, but that anyone else on the job necessarily just like respects him for being a good guy. Like they all sort of toe the line with him because he's got this reputation.
He's not a good cop and he's not a good guy. He was just about to let June die
Yeah.
over what? Like, we don't know how far his secrets go, but it doesn't matter. No matter what his secret is, no matter what he's done, it's not worth June's life.
No, it's not.
He's gonna let another cop die.
He's just so willing to do whatever he can to sort of maintain this reputation and the way in which people perceive him. And if June dying doesn't affect his reputation, or in fact it helps him because the truth never comes out about the past, like he's willing to do that. And I'm just sitting back being like, why are you the way that you are? You know, it's funny. I'm wearing a Dunder Mifflin shirt here, and I'm about to be like, Michael Scott talking to Toby. It's just like, why are you the way that you are here, Daniel, where you care this much about what these other people think of you? Is it just that this is all you have? Is there something else you got going on here?
The thing is that I think Daniel played his hand of like, I'm smarter than you with the two different people on the phone calls in the last episode with June way too early. I think he completely mishandled that situation because now she has enough information on how he plays to be able to play that back.
Yeah.
That whole scene where she ends up telling him that she went to White Cross and who she went to see, and that she, lied about who she went to see, but that she now knows that he has his hand in everything and that someone probably very likely told him. He's everywhere. He knows everything. That she can give enough information to be able to get away with what she needs to get away with. He's given her like the key to the kingdom to be able to get away with what she needs to.
And that's what makes this situation kind of interesting and complicated, is that I think Daniel, upon hearing this information about White Cross, he's probably like, I wonder if she's really telling me the truth, but he has no way to verify anything anymore because what she says makes a reasonable amount of sense and no amount of digging that he can really do. Unless he had someone there in the freaking room and there's no real evidence of that, then it's just like, this is all you're gonna get right now, dude. Like, this is where things are until you try to find a way to get one over on her again. And it just feels like we're moving into full on cat and mouse here territory where they're both going to try to constantly trick the other one, get one thing over the other one. I mean, my hard hat sort of idea as to where this show is going. And I do not want this. I'm going to make that clear. Just like I made it clear with everything with Wit on Fargo.
Oh my God, if you say June is going to die, I don't want to hear it. Okay.
June's not going to die, but she may end up losing her job. I think June's going to be able to put away Daniel. I just think that, and, potentially make sure that Errol ends up getting free. And I think we're going to have a victory there. But what is the cost going to be for that? Because it just feels like Daniel's already gotten so many wheels in motion when it comes to people looking into June that she is going to be really a wanted person within her own department. And it feels like one of the messages this show is going to give us is just that there are bad people all across the board. Not everybody in policing is bad, but like there's some bad people in here. They're going to try to get some element of vengeance if she goes so far and she incriminates some people they don't want incriminated. And that's a real tragedy. It just doesn't feel like this show is moving towards a like happy everybody wins, let's go to a pub and celebrate ending.
I just feel like she's not going to be able to put him away with how much Daniel and all of his friends and all the sort of tendrils he has out there. It feels like she's not going to actually be able to put him away. He could be standing in a pool of blood and they still would be like, oh, it's Daniel. He would do nothing wrong, sort of thing. I think it's going to be, we saw some foreshadowing here with Daniel watching June about to be killed, that we will end up in a situation later on down the road where either she has to kill him or she's going to just allow him to die. And that's the way that it's going to have to be tied up. It's going to be weird because if they do decide to do a second season, if Daniel's still in it, there has to be some sort of like, man, they got to hit some sort of a curve
Yeah.
where he completely turns around or gets away with something where they go into the next season where they're either still fighting each other or they're working together. But they're going to have to hit a real hard curve on that.
Okay, here's the part of this episode that I really just didn't like. Everything that's going on with the kid, like everything that's sort of separate from the Hayes Lane collar, the relationship between Daniel and June. I don't care really about the rest right now. And I mean, what happened to the kid is terrible. I mean,
Mhm.
don't get me wrong on all of that. It's just sort of the more the show moves away from sort of the central relationship, even to the point where we're dealing, with June's family. And I said some of that about the husband or whatever else in the last episode. It's just like that stuff's not as successful to me because that stuff is taking sort of the eye off the ball. I think that the question is, what are we watching this show for? It's because we like Chris Jumbo and Peter Capaldi, and we want to see the two of them kind of square off. And it's like that's where this show shines.
I agree. This side story was not doing it for me. And also, they were like, this kid was on his way home from school. I'm like, no, he wasn't. He was wearing karate outfit with a white belt. He was either going to the dojo or he was coming back from the dojo.
It just feels like there's not as much focus on anything else, and it's sort of like this show was developed to have this really interesting relationship between these two characters, but nothing else around them is really altogether fleshed out. And maybe that will change as the season goes along here. It's just like I have a very focused approach to Criminal Record right now, and I want all of the attention given to this. I don't know why I'm saying it like this as though they're going to listen to me, but you know what? That's where we are.
Yeah, hopefully they'll get their focus back in the next episode.
All right, well, that's all we got to say about Criminal Record Season 1, Episode 3, but hit that subscribe button so you guys don't miss any other coverage. Also, check out our Patreon. We have weekly discussions, live streams all about Criminal Record, and thank you to our patrons for your support.
You.
We'll see you here next time.